In May 1906, while his second wife, Tleebuleetsa, lay dying in their Portage Bay cabin, John Cheshiahud honored her final wish. As the Seattle Post-Intelligencer reported, it was that in her last days she be surrounded by her kinsfolk and the friends of her youth. Lake Union John, as Cheshiahud was known to his white neighbors, sent messengers throughout the Duwamish diaspora, and during 3 days of celebration and solemn farewell, family and friends came from the Port Madison, Puyallup, and Muckleshoot reservations to pay last respects. The Duwamish chief, Cheshiahud, is noted for remaining in Seattle long after the influx of white immigrants. Born circa 1820, he came of age before the settlers' arrival. In a 90-year-long life, he witnessed unimaginable change. His close friendship with a prominent newcomer fueled his drive to remain on ancestral lands near his birth village. A sympathetic David Denny sold him 5 forested acres on Portage Bay for $1. While hunting, fishing, trapping, and occasionally serving as tour guide, Cheshiahud straddled 2 worlds, one on the verge of certain annihilation. Given earlier encounters with white homesteaders, Cheshiahud may have anticipated coming troubles, having narrowly escaped execution by a lynch mob. Denny's daughter, Abby Denny Lindsley, provided the harrowing details in a newspaper account decades later. She wrote that in 1854, her father, with David Doc Maynard and Henry Yesler, discovered the remains of a murder victim in a shallow grave near Lake Union. Advanced decay prevented identification. When the murder became known, she wrote, 3 young Indians were arrested and imprisoned, although no more guilty than the rest of their tribe. An angry mob gathered and hung 2 of the men. As they strung up the 3rd, Sheriff Carson Boren arrived and ordered them to stop, but they refused. In response, he cut the rope, noted Denny Lindsley, Boren's niece, just in time to save Cheshiahud's life. Found innocent of any charges, Cheshiahud never ceased to be grateful to his rescuer, who happened to be the same person who initially detained him without cause. Leaders of the lynch mob also were tried, Denny Lindsley wrote, but it never amounted to anything. In summer 1906, distraught after Tleebuleetsa's passing, Cheshiahud sold the last piece of his Lake Union land for a significant profit, making him one of the wealthiest Native Americans in Puget Sound. He joined his daughter Jenny Davis in Port Madison, where he remained until his death in 1910. In his honor, Seattle Parks in 2008 opened Cheshiahud Loop, a paved path circumnavigating his beloved Lake Union. In our first then photo, Cheshiahud, also known as Lake Union John, and his second wife Tleebuleetsa, a.k.a. Madeline, posed near their cabin in a 1904 portrait taken by Orion Denny, David's nephew. In our second then photo, this blurry portrait of the Cheshiahud cabin was taken in May 1906 during a 3-day gathering to bid farewell to Tleebuleetsa on her deathbed. Friends and relatives feasted at plank tables outside. In our third then photo, Cheshiahud pilots his canoe in 1885, transporting travelers across Portage Bay. Later in life, testifying in a property dispute, he said, "You white men measure everything, the depths of the waters, the distances of the land, here, there, everywhere. We Indians come and go and care nothing for measurements." In our fourth then photo, Seattle Mayor Greg Nichols cuts a ribbon to dedicate the Cheshiahud Loop on December 3rd, 2008. In our first now photo, Duwamish elder Ken Workman stands near the location of Cheshiahud's cabin at the foot of Shelby Street, with an eastern view of Portage Bay. In our second now photo, the view from Portage Bay looking west up Shelby Street. Cheshiahud's 5 acres extended along the waterfront to encompass much of the current neighborhood. Nearby, the city's Cheshiahud Loop, a paved path circumnavigating Lake Union and dedicated by then-Mayor Greg Nichols on December 3, 2008, is the home of an annual 10K race.
It was actually so controversial because the fort intruded on